Hi, I'm Emily, and welcome back to another week of News Bytes. This newsletter, I feel strongly about it, and I don't mean in a bad way, just it's something I've thought about a lot in the past, and something I've kind of had to deal with, I guess, in the past as well, kind of. So I have some extensive comments I made about it, and I'm going to share those with you later on. But this newsletter is called Acts of the Emissaries, Ultimate Freedom Movement Handbook, and it is on Acts chapter 5, verses 12 through 42. I'll go ahead and get into it. From Eliyahu. Consider this. I recently came across an article entitled, "What Our Leaders Aren't Telling You." Jesus was a radical social activist. Among other claims, the article says, there are only two hard historical facts about Jesus. One, he was a Jew from Nazareth who led a popular Jewish movement in Palestine at the beginning of the 1st century. And two, Rome crucified him for doing so. This opinion was published, not surprisingly, by a bright-eyed young man who might be described in modern times as a social justice warrior. He describes himself as a Christian and ends his comments saying, "When I look around and see rising poverty and inequality, sexism, racism, religious persecution, and environmental destruction, I pray for the courage that I lack to be a radical social activist like Jesus." There are points in his article that I feel I can disprove from Scripture, but I'm not looking to argue those points right now. I'm interested here in his primary claim that Jesus, I'll call him by his real Hebrew name from here on out, Yeshua, was a radical social activist who founded a radical social activist movement. While commenting on this proposition, I have no desire to be hostile towards this young man or other young folks like him, many of whom have a strong desire for a just society. Indeed, the Bible has much to say about the importance of justice, and that's a big issue for me too. Without a doubt, Yeshua had a passion for justice and often spoke unwelcome truth to immoral elites who oppressed the common people in that day. Indeed, those elites could not overcome the power of the truth he spoke and lived, which is why they conspired to kill him. Is it fair to describe a man like that as a radical social activist? While that doesn't begin to cover all of who he is, I certainly can see how some people could see him that way. For the purposes of this discussion, let's admit the term radical social activist as applying to Yeshua. If he was that, did that mean the same for him as it does for many social justice warriors today? Do we have any examples of Yeshua setting buildings on fire, yelling obscenities at the equivalent of the police, or even killing people for the cause? We don't have to guess to the answers, since he tells us how he would have us behave towards the unjust. He said, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I tell you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who mistreat you and persecute you, that you may be children of your Father who is in heaven. For he makes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the just and the unjust." That's in Matthew 5:43 through 44. Yeshua was a radical social activist who made no demands on the unjust world, and those running it, to become righteous and good. He already knew that changing the system was a futile endeavor. He did not demand that Rome or Herod or the elites of the land change the laws to be more fair for everyone, or his movement would burn it all down. Rather, his message was for individuals to change their hearts, to live out a life of love and goodness, even towards those who do them harm. And that's still the answer. Change yourself to change your life. That was the radical social activism Yeshua advocated. Actually, Yeshua made it very clear that he had no interest in changing this world by political activism. He made that very clear in this prayer for his followers. The world hates them because they're not of the world, even as I am not of the world. I pray not that you would take them from the world, but that you would keep them from the evil one. They are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. That was in John 17:14-16. Further, when asked by Pilate about his political ambitions, Yeshua said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would fight, that I wouldn't be delivered to the Judeans. But now my kingdom is not from here." And that's John 18:36. And my thoughts on this. I hate the world. I mean, I think most people my age, or any age really, who have a desire for righteousness and people being treated fairly and like they're human, hate the world. Because it's obvious that the world is unjust, that it's wicked and evil and horrible, and it makes me really angry. And I've always gotten really angry, almost irrationally angry, when I see news that's going on now and in the past about different things and all the evil that goes on in the world, whether it's presented in the news or public, or whether it's a hidden thing, kind of, like in the background. And the injustice against people aren't even treated like people. And I just get really angry. And I think people who have a desire for righteousness do get really angry. But this is what can happen, especially when you're more younger and more idealistic, and you take in the message of wanting to change the world. You want to change the world because you hate it. And you absolutely loathe it. It's disgusting and it's horrible. And living in it, it just drives you mad. It can drive you crazy just living in this world and knowing how evil it is. You can't ignore it, if you have a heart for righteousness and for justice. But then you will try to change it, or you have this, you think you can change it, I mean, it's always fed to us. You can change the world, you can make the world a better place. Well, you can't. But you think you can, and then you'll try to change the world, or you'll try to change people, and you'll try to make them see, and you'll try to do something. You'll try to do anything, because you just can't stand existing in such an unrighteous and horrible world, and you hate it. But you'll eventually realize that you really can't change it, and you can't change anything in the world, and then you won't just hate the world. You'll start to hate humanity, You'll start to hate people, and you'll hate everything because you feel bitter and you feel angry. And you'll just become angry and bitter at everything and everyone. And then before you know it, you just became what you hate. You became like the world, where you're just bitter and angry at everything and everyone and the world and people and everything, because you can't change the world and you can't change people. And you'll just be consumed by those feelings. So, congratulations. But the thing is, there is a way to rise above that, and you can do something so that that won't happen to you. Don't let that happen to you. It's very easy to fall into. But you can't change the world. You have to accept that first. And even though you can't change it, you can rise above it. You can overcome it. You can choose to be the complete opposite of the world, and not to let the world control who you are. Prove the world wrong. You don't have to be like it. You don't have to become bitter and angry and hateful at everything and unjust and consumed by those feelings. And you can still hate injustice and evil, but you need Yeshua to do that. You can't rise above the world without him. And I had a verse I wanted to share. though, on this, though, kind of. It's 1 John 4:4, and it says, "You are of God, little children, and have overcome them, because greater is he that is in you than he that is of the world. And if you let him change you, he can change you to rise above and overcome the world, because he overcame the world first." And what he taught and preached and walked was a completely opposite of how the world would have you act. But you will fall into that hatred and bitterness by yourself, because that's your human nature. And you just can't do it without him. And I mean, you could try, but I'll tell you right now, you can't. You really can't. You're not better. The world is dark and it can consume you. That's why you have to have the light of life in you to be a light yourself, to rise above, rise above the world, and not just don't be consumed by all that anger and hatred. It's a dark path. And it's not a religion. It's real. It's following him as he leads you. And it's a personal relationship. And you can rise above the world with him, but not without him. If you don't want to become what you hate, you need him. And you don't have to prove the world right. You can rise above it and just let Yeshua work in you and change you, to be better, to be a light, to put forth the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, and goodness, gentleness, self-control. And that's all the opposite of the world. And if you hate the world, and I know a lot of people do, especially in my day and age where there's just injustice everywhere, and you're young and you don't know where to look, it's always been about Yeshua, I'm sorry, but you just can't do it without him. If you hate the world, no movement or person or politics or anything is going to help you. It has to be him in your life, working in your life, and you following him to become a child of the kingdom and of become a child of God, to be a child of light, a new creature. Because otherwise, all you have is this world. There's only two choices. There's the world and there's Yeshua. So you have to make a choice. And if you don't want to be like the world, then choose Yeshua. You don't want to be like the world. Every day it proves its evil and wickedness, and there's nothing in it. So, excuse me, I'm sorry. I got off on a tangent there. So, excuse me. But that's mostly what I wanted to say, because obviously I feel very strongly about this, and I still can get so angry and bitter if I let myself, and try to find something or someone to blame. But really, all you can do is just look to Yeshua and live a set-apart life as much as you can, So anyways, I'll continue with the newsletter now. Okay. Yeshua's mission, which he passed on to his entire movement, does not focus on changing this world. It is about saving people out of this world, transferring them into his kingdom. His kingdom remains the only hope for solving all of the most pressing problems of mankind. Changing the system? That's about as effective as polishing the brass on the Titanic about to hit the iceberg, which pretty much describes where this world is at right now. The book of Acts is the story of Yeshua's followers after his death, resurrection, and ascension to heaven. They were commissioned to carry on his work in the earth, and they did so with great commitment and power. They never tried to change the world. Yet, they too were activists, kingdom activists. A lot can be learned by their confrontations with the system in their day, and that story shows they learned the lesson Yeshua modeled and taught them. They were not trying to save the world. They were saving people out of the world. Out of the world. And that's still happening right here, right now, and we can learn a lot from them. So, if you want to watch that meeting, it's a very good meeting. I would encourage you, like I do every week, to sign up at Zion.net and learn to be a kingdom activist. Not a social justice warrior activist, but a kingdom activist. If you liked this newsletter, hit the like button, leave your comments below, and thank you for joining me, and excuse my ranting. Blessings and good health to you. See you next week.